Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 2. Now let's start the fanfic. Naruto. There are things we should talk about. Naruto's shoulders tensed almost imperceptibly. About the 9 tails. For a heartbeat, Naruto simply stood there, eyes fixed somewhere past the Hokage's desk, as if bracing himself for something unseen. Hiruzen watched closely, measuring that silence. Whatever Naruto was carrying right now, it wasn't exploding outward. It was being buried. Much to the old man's relief, Naruto hesitated only a moment before finally sitting. He perched on the edge of the chair, back straight, hands resting loosely in his lap, like he wasn't sure how long he was allowed to stay. Tonight, you were exposed to a part of the shinobi world most are not meant to face so young. The reality that not everyone who wears our symbol does so with loyalty. Naruto didn't respond. Mizuki's actions were criminal, Hiruzen continued. Stopping him prevented far greater harm. Whatever mistakes led you there, the outcome matters. You protected the village. Sure, Naruto said, his gaze drifted downward. Guess the demon brat has done some good. The word hung in the air. Naruto. It's fine. Everyone else already thinks it. That does not make it true, Hiruzen said sharply. You are not a demon. Naruto paused, fingers tightening slightly against his knees. Then what am I? You are the Jinchuriki of the Ninetails. Jin. What? A Jinchuriki is a human chosen to contain a tailed beast, Hiruzen explained. The beast is sealed within you, restrained so it cannot harm others. You are not the beast itself. You are the one who holds it. So I'm not. The boy hesitated, the word catching in his throat. I'm not it. You are not the 9 tails. And you must never allow anyone to convince you otherwise. Then why? Why do they look at me like I did something wrong? Hiruzen exhaled. Because fear is easier than understanding, he said. And because when they look at you, they remember the night they were powerless. He met Naruto's gaze. You remind them of what they lost. Not of who you are. Naruto absorbed that in silence. Then a logical question followed. Then why did they know, and I didn't? 7 years ago, I passed a law forbidding anyone from speaking of your status. I believed secrecy would give you a chance at a normal childhood. Naruto let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Guess that worked out great. The bitterness in his voice wasn't loud. But it struck all the same. Hiruzen opened his mouth, then closed it again. There was no defense to offer that didn't ring hollow. Hokage-sama. The title alone made Hiruzen pause. Naruto had always called him old man. Hearing the formal address felt like a line being drawn between them. Why did you tell them and not me? Before his death, the 4th Hokage asked that you be seen as a hero. The one who protected the village. Naruto let out a short, humorless snort. Hiruzen didn't blame him. Minato, bless his soul, had always been too trusting of the village, too hopeful. He had believed in the people's ability to see past their grief and pain, to see the sacrifice that had been made. The village wouldn't accept it. They were drowning in pain and loss. In that state, Minato's request asked more of them than they were capable of giving. Worse, there was a real danger that their grief could turn into hatred, and that you could become its target. So I chose restraint. I kept the truth from everyone, until the village was stable enough to honor Minato's wish properly. His expression darkened slightly. But by the time you were 5, your status was leaked. So I enacted the law. If the adults couldn't let go of their fear and hatred, then at the very least, the next generation would grow up without it. I wanted them to know you, not the burden you carry. Hiruzen felt the change before Naruto seemed aware of it himself. Chakra seeped from the boy's body, dense and oppressive, filling the room with a weight that pressed down like the first warning of an oncoming quake. Emotion and chakra had always shared a dangerous relationship. Chakra was not merely energy shaped by hand seals. It was tied to the mind, to intent, and to the emotional state of the one wielding it. Under normal circumstances, shinobi learned early how to keep that connection restrained. Control was drilled into them until instinct took over. But when emotions reached a breaking point, chakra no longer waited to be shaped. It surged outward on its own. In heightened emotional states, chakra could be forced out of the body entirely, bypassing technique and control. For most shinobi, this resulted in sloppy output, wasted energy, or momentary instability. For someone like Naruto, with reserves as deep as his, it was far more dangerous. The wooden floor creaked beneath his feet. Fine cracks spread along the boards as pressure settled into the room, the air growing thick and oppressive. And in that sudden surge, Hiruzen felt it. For the briefest instant, it was as if screaming faces rose up around him. Distorted, hollow visages twisted in agony, mouths open in silent cries. They vanished just as quickly, but the sensation did not. Hiruzen's breath caught in his throat. Killer intent. In the shinobi world, intent was often spoken of as a badge of honor. Proof that one had crossed the line between innocence, bloodshed, and survival. To many, it was a symbol of a truly dangerous shinobi. That belief had always troubled him. In truth, intent was yin chakra shaped by memory, emotion, and death. No one fully understood why. Beauty sometimes left residue behind. Some deaths passed without a trace, carried out in cold necessity or detached duty. Others left behind faint imprints in the chakra network, like scars too fine to notice until pressure was applied. Yin chakra, bound as it was to the psyche and the soul, seemed especially vulnerable to holding onto these marks. When a shinobi bearing such residue stirred their chakra with the desire to, even unconsciously, those imprints responded. Killer intent manifested. For the average shinobi, intent was something they knew of, not something they truly possessed. A concept taught in classrooms and whispered about on battlefields, but rarely felt firsthand. Even veterans of the Great Wars carried it like buried shrapnel, lodged deep within their chakra and psyche, detectable only by sensitives or by those standing uncomfortably close. Simplying a few times was not enough. It took years of repetition, a gradual erosion of the boundary betweening as a necessary act ending as an instinctive response, before that weight could begin to seep outward. Those capable of projecting it were rarer than any keke genkai, and almost without exception, they were monsters wearing human skin. Zabuza Momochi was a famous example. A prodigy who slaughtered his entire graduating class without hesitation. His chakra had been permanently warped by the act, saturated with death so thoroughly that Heiser intent felt like standing in front of a blood demon. But Naruto Uzumaki had only Ed Mizuki. A single was never meant to give rise to or intent, least of all one powerful enough to cause even minor illusory effects. So how, in the sage's great beard, was this possible? Is this because of the 9 tails? The simplest answer was often the most likely. Minato's seal had been constructed to let the Kyuubi's chakra flow slowly into Naruto's own, and the Kyuubi's chakra was infamous for its hatred. If that malice had bled through along with the power, then it stood to reason that traces of intent had taken root in Naruto as well. For now, it was the only explanation Hiruzen could accept, one that kept him from spiraling into darker speculations about how a child could possess such intent at all. One of the Anbu was already behind Naruto before most eyes could have tracked her movement. Purple hair slipped from beneath a porcelain cat mask as she appeared in his blind spot. A tanto slid free without a whisper, the blade angling toward Naruto's throat. Not to but to restrain. With the intent pouring from him, he had become a potential threat. Naruto moved first. A kunai left his hand in a sharp snap, slicing through the air toward the space behind him as if he already knew she was there. The Anbu twisted, knocking it aside, but her eyes narrowed behind the mask. That reaction alone was troubling. Even seasoned Chunin struggled to track Anbu-level body flicker techniques. For Naruto to counter from a blind angle meant one of two things. He had been hiding a far greater skill level than anyone suspected, or he possessed a sensory ability no one had documented. Another crack in the version of Naruto he thought he understood. Seeing Naruto and Anbu cat poised to clash, Hiruzen released his chakra. Stop. The word with it chakra that cracked the walls and splintering the floor as pressure slammed down on everyone present. Anbu froze mid-motion. Naruto stiffened, unable to move. The room remembered who ruled it. This is the Hokage's office, Hiruzen said calmly. Stand down. The cat-masked Anbu immediately disengaged, stepping back into the shadows. An uneasy silence settled over the office. Naruto stood rigid, impatience radiating off him in sharp, restless waves. Whatever was keeping him here, it clearly wasn't where his mind wanted to be. Where's the guy who ruined my life? Danzo. Even in exile, the man's influence lingered like a stain that refused to wash out. I've handled it, Hiruzen replied evenly. You will not have to concern yourself with him. The answer hadn't satisfied him, and it showed. Without waiting for dismissal, he turned toward the door, already moving, as if whatever lay beyond these walls mattered more than anything Hiruzen could say. Naruto. The name stopped him, but only for a second. Hiruzen rose slowly from behind his desk as an old man watching a boy walk away. There are things I cannot undo, he said quietly. Mistakes I've made. Choices I stand by, even if they cost me your trust. Naruto's hand tightened on the doorknob. But whatever you are facing, you do not have to face it alone. Hiruzen stepped forward, the weight of decades in his voice. If there are answers you seek, come to me. If there are burdens you carry, let me share them. I may not have told you everything when you were younger, but I have never stopped watching over you. For a moment, Hiruzen allowed himself hope. Hope that the boy would turn back. That he could still bridge the distance between them, understand what was happening to him, learn where these new abilities had come from, and maybe, just maybe, preserve what remained of their bond. Save it. The words were flat. I'm done listening. The handle turned. And if you really cared, Naruto added, voice colder now, stripped of its usual heat, you would have told me the truth from the start. The door opened. Hiruzen's last thread of hope frayed, but he still tried. Naruto. The door slammed shut, the echo rolling through the office like a verdict. Hiruzen stood there long after the sound faded, staring at the empty space where the boy had been, wondering when exactly the distance between them had grown so wide. Dinner was quiet, just the way Inoichi Yamanaka liked it. His daughter, Ino Yamanaka, sat across from him, a fair-skinned teen with average height, her long platinum blonde hair framing the right side of her face. Her green eyes were glued to one of those cheesy romance novels she was always reading, and he tried to ignore the irritation building up as she skimmed through the pages rather than her food. Today, Inoichi had made sure to include a few high-calorie dishes. Things she wouldn't notice were meant to keep her from getting too skinny with that damn diet of hers. He knew she wouldn't appreciate the extra calories, but as her father, he had to make sure she stayed healthy enough to be a proper shinobi in the field. Ino-chan, let's try something different today. Imagine you're walking through a dense forest. As you walk deeper, you come across a house. It looks familiar, but you've never seen it before. You step inside. What do you see? Ino's mind snapped to attention as she considered the question. Her father always made sure to ask her one psychological question every night before bed to keep her mind sharp. A ninja's greatest weapon was their mind, after all. Ino chewed thoughtfully on her food. The house is cozy, old but well kept. There's a warm fireplace and the walls are lined with books. She paused, a slow smile spreading across her face. And obviously my dream guy would be waiting for me there, tall and handsome. This is about Sasuke again, huh? Of course. He'd be there, probably with a cup of tea already made for me. It's romantic. Inoichi couldn't fault her for this, not yet anyway. She was a young girl at the start of puberty. Let her have her fantasies. The crush was innocent enough, but Ino was now a genin. Life as a shinobi was anything but a romantic novel. Maybe that's why Inoichi let her indulge in these little daydreams. For now, her innocence was fleeting, and he knew it would be stripped away in time. But even as he told himself that, his gaze drifted toward the picture of her mother, his late wife, who had died during the Kyuubi attack. Don't worry, my love, he thought. As long as I'm breathing, nothing will harm our daughter. I just have to make sure that she is ready for the real world. Interesting answer. You know, how you interpret that house reveals a lot about how you see your inner self. My inner self. The house represents your subconscious mind. What you see inside is a reflection of how you view yourself, your strengths, comfort zones, and even your desires. So, you're saying my mind is a cozy cabin? Inoichi smiled. More or less. It suggests you value comfort, warmth, and intellect. But the fact that you brought your dream guy into the picture indicates something else. Ino blushed slightly. What does it mean? It means that, subconsciously, you believe someone like Sasuke is important to completing your vision of happiness, Inoichi explained. It's natural to want connection, Ino, but you should also be mindful that relying too much on others to create your inner peace can lead to disappointment. She sat quietly for a moment, processing the information. Then, with a sly smile, she said, well, Sasuke can be part of my cozy cabin if he wants. I'm not kicking him out. Just don't let your cabin rely on someone else's presence. Make sure it stands on its own, with or without him. Yeah, I know. Suddenly, Inoichi was on guard as an Anbu agent appeared before them. The Hokage has requested a meeting, Inoichi-sama. Inoichi nodded, his mask already switching from father to shinobi. Dad, can you maybe bribe the Hokage to make sure I end up on Sasuke's team? I'll try, Inoichi said, using the nickname she pretended to hate. She stuck her tongue out at him, a playful glint in her eyes. Remember the routine. All leftovers go in the fridge, and make sure Choji gets them tomorrow. Especially the seaweed chips. Those are for you. Fine, whatever. Inoichi smiled softly at the exchange, savoring the moment. Goodbye. Just go already, Ino said, waving him off like he was an embarrassment. Inoichi glanced at the Anbu agent, and with a final nod to his daughter, the two of them vanished with a body flicker. The moment Inoichi stepped into the Hokage's office, he knew something was wrong. Hiruzen looked more stressed than Inoichi had ever seen him. It was as if the announcement of the Fourth Shinobi World War had dropped on his desk. A knot formed in Inoichi's stomach. Please, anything but that. The thought of war sent a chill down his spine. Not only did he fear war himself, but he could not bear the thought of his daughter experiencing the horrors that came with it. Hokage-sama, Inoichi greeted, his voice steady, yet his mind was racing through worst-case scenarios. Hiruzen seemed to sense his growing unease and offered Inoichi his smoking pipe. Thank you, Hokage-sama, but I'd like to live long enough to see my daughter marry a bastard that doesn't deserve her, Inoichi said with a small smile, though the humor did little to settle the tension gnawing at him. Don't worry, Inoichi. I need your mind. My mind. Inoichi narrowed his focus on those words. If Hiruzen needed strategic advice, he would have called Shikaku. The Nara clan head was a genius when it came to battle plans and strategy. But this was not about strategy. Hiruzen needed him for psychological insight. What can I do for you? It's Naruto. Inoichi's mind slammed to a halt. Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto. The prankster of Konoha. The orphaned son of the fourth Hokage. The current container for the Kyuubi no Yoko, the very being that had ravaged their village 12 years ago, and his wife. Inoichi had never blamed the boy for what happened. He knew the difference between Naruto and the Kyuubi. But the very idea of the Kyuubi was enough to make him take this seriously. His mind raced through everything he knew about Naruto. From the rumors around the village to the comments Ino had made about him. Is this about his failed graduation? Perhaps Naruto was angry about failing, or maybe he had a violent outburst. It was not impossible that the Kyuubi's chakra had been released in a moment of anger. The boy dreamed of becoming Hokage, and Inoichi could imagine the frustration building inside him after failing to become a genin. If only it were that simple, Hiruzen said, rubbing his head before revealing everything that had happened with Naruto. Inoichi listened quietly as he tried very hard to ignore the seemingly impossible things Naruto could suddenly do. Any shinobi worth their salt would analyze these abilities. But Inoichi's mind went to the boy. What do you know about Uzumaki Naruto? Hiruzen found the question odd at first. Then he remembered who was asking it, and it became another issue entirely. He answered carefully. What do you know about Uzumaki Naruto personally? The guilt arrived quietly, the way it always did when it was deserved. Hiruzen answered what he could. The boy had a fondness for ramen. A penchant for pranks. He was loud, boisterous, and wanted nothing more than to become Hokage. What else? What else? Well, that is. The third Hokage of Konoha felt his lips press into a thin, sad line. That was, as a matter of fact, all he knew. Had this been anyone other than Yamanaka Inoichi, Hiruzen might have dismissed the line of questioning as paranoia, or worse, some hidden bias against the boy. But Inoichi had known, worked, and fought beside Minato. Beyond that, Inoichi had known Kushina. Had known her well enough that certain things didn't need to be said out loud. Whatever complicated feelings a younger Inoichi had quietly carried for Kushina Uzumaki, they had never translated into anything, and time had a way of filing those edges down. But they had left the particular tenderness a person holds for someone they once wanted to protect and never got the chance to. He would not hold the sins of this village against her son. I do not see how this relates to our current problem, Inoichi. The problem, Hokage-sama, is that we are human beings. Not one-dimensional cardboard cutouts. Inoichi's voice was measured. It is impossible for a person to have only 3 features that make him memorable. Only 3 aspects to his personality and character. He shook his head slowly. To put this into perspective. What does Uzumaki Naruto do when he is neither pranking people, nor eating ramen, nor declaring his intention to steal your hat? Where does he go? How does he spend his time when he is not performing for an audience? What does he do at the end of a long and exhausting day, when there is no one left to perform for? The answers to all 3 questions were equally unknown. The weight of that settled over Hiruzen slowly, the way a verdict does. He had watched over this boy. Had told himself that watching was enough. Had convinced himself that proximity was the same as presence. It wasn't. There is a concept that we use in psychological evaluation. We call it the social self. It is the version of a person that exists in relation to others. The face that forms in response to how the world treats you, what it rewards, punishes, and refuses to acknowledge entirely. He paused. When a child learns that who they are is not wanted, they do one of 2 things. They collapse inward and disappear entirely. Or they build a version of themselves that is loud enough to be noticed, simple enough to be understood, and harmless enough to be tolerated. Inoichi's voice didn't rise, but something in it sharpened. Naruto chose the second. He found the things that got a reaction, and he repeated them. Because any response, even a negative one, was proof that he existed. Hiruzen said nothing. The boy we knew was not wearing a mask. That implies awareness, calculation, and sustained effort over time. No child maintains that for 12 years without cracks slipping through. Inoichi's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. And that is where it becomes complicated. Because that kind of construction works both ways. It keeps the world out. But it also keeps the person in. Over time, even they begin to lose track of where the performance ends and the self begins. The loud boy stops being something Naruto chose to be. He becomes the only Naruto that Naruto himself knows how to access. He let that settle for a moment before continuing. This is why what you saw tonight concerns me far more than any jutsu. Inoichi's gaze was steady. Whatever Naruto experienced out there, it reached past years of layered reflex and pulled someone else to the surface. He paused. In psychology, we call this a dissociative break. When the constructed self can no longer contain what is underneath it, the pressure finds another way out. Hiruzen's jaw tightened. We have no idea what Uzumaki Naruto has been through. We have no idea who or what shaped that part of him. Inoichi's voice was quiet, but the weight behind it was not. And that, Hokage-sama, is the real problem. Not the jutsu, the weapons, or their intent. The problem is that somewhere, in the life of a child this village was supposed to protect, someone reached him before we did. And whoever it was, it left marks we are only now beginning to see. The office was very quiet. His age was rapidly catching up to him. He knew and believed that he had tried to do his best for not only the village, but also for the son of his successor. Everyone Minato knew that was capable of taking care of Naruto was not available. Kakashi Hatake was a mess, psychologically speaking. After the loss of his teammates, he retreated into Anbu and took only the toughest of missions of the S-rank caliber, and it was clear that he possessed some sort of death wish. He clearly could not leave the upbringing of a child to him. Jiraiya was far too busy maintaining Konoha's spy networks, or at least, as his job did include him traveling from place to place drinking in bars and taverns and peeping on women in hot springs. Of course, even if he was not basically a wanderer, the third could not in good conscience leave Jiraiya all alone to raise a child. Tsunade would have been perfect, but she was now an alcoholic gambling addict lost to her own grief, and he would not want her raising an impressionable young child either. Makoto Uchiha had once offered, but the clan politics were against such a thing. As the Uchiha clan had just been suspected of the ones masterminding the Kyuubi's attack in the first place, it would be tremendously bad if one of their own had then decided to adopt the boy. The Hyuga were out of the question, and part of his village they might be, but Hiruzen had never appreciated or favored a clan that could and would so callously brand their own family members as slaves in the name of preserving and protecting a bloodline. Such a place was not where he wanted Naruto to grow up, believing that such practices were the norm. The Aburame once again offered, but it was likewise impossible as at the time, the Kyuubi's chakra and presence made their Kikaichu bugs scared and wary. And of course, there was the issue of Naruto eventually growing up to feel like an outsider, as he vastly contrasted the majority of the Aburame. The ideal clans would have either been the Nara, the Yamanaka, the Akamichi, or the Inuzuka. However, there was once again the question of allowing a single clan that much power. It was not viewed as a clan attempting to train and foster the son of their hero. Rather, as a clan potentially raising and shifting the loyalty of a Jinchuriki away from the village and into their own hands. And so Naruto had grown up unloved and uncared for, and Hiruzen had told himself that watching from a distance was the same as protecting him. It wasn't. Hokage-sama. He surfaced from his deep thoughts slowly. Forgive me. What should we do? Observe him for now, Inoichi said. If we move too quickly or too obviously, we risk pushing him further away than he already is. But there is something more important than understanding his abilities right now. Oh, we need to give him a reason to stay. Inoichi's voice was quiet but certain. Not the will of fire. Not duty or obligation or the memory of his parents. Something that belongs to him and not to this village's idea of what he should be. He met Hiruzen's eyes. Konoha failed that boy for years. If we want him to stand with us, we have to earn it. And we have to start now, before whatever is happening to him pulls him somewhere we cannot follow. Hiruzen nodded slowly. And the abilities themselves, we still don't understand where they came from. No, we don't. Hiruzen's mouth curved faintly, tired humor finding its way through. It would all be considerably simpler if Naruto weren't the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. Under normal circumstances, I'd authorize your department to conduct a memory reading on a suspect and have answers before morning. Yes. Unfortunately, sending a Yamanaka into the mindscape of a child housing the nine-tailed fox is considerably above the threshold of acceptable risk. Indeed. So we observe, plan, and find another way in. What did you have in mind, Hokage-sama? Naruto burst through the door of his apartment, nearly taking it off its hinges. He didn't stop to kick off his sandals. His eyes swept the apartment in one quick scan and he was already moving, muscle memory carrying him through the chaos he knew better than anywhere else in the world. The entryway was its usual disaster. Boxes stacked crookedly against the wall, bottles he kept meaning to throw out, shoes kicked in every direction. He stepped over all of it without looking down and hit the storage cabinet first. Top shelf. Left side. Behind the instant ramen he'd been saving. His hands closed around the first pouch and he shook it, listening for the familiar rattle of shuriken before holding it out in front of him. It shimmered and vanished. Shuriken pouch X1 has been added to inventory. Second pouch behind it, full set of kunai. He'd counted them yesterday out of habit. Kunai pouch X1 has been added to inventory. He moved to the desk next. It was buried, as always, under open books and empty cups and papers covered in half-finished notes on his assignments from the academy. He shoved most of it aside and yanked open the bottom drawer. Explosive tags, bundled in groups of 5 the way he'd seen it done in a book he'd borrowed from the academy library and never returned. He grabbed all 4 bundles, held them out, watched them shimmer away one after another. Explosive tags X25 has been added to inventory. Smoke bombs were in the kitchen. He ducked around the corner and pulled open the cabinet above the stove, the one that was supposed to hold cooking supplies but mostly held things he didn't know where else to put. 8 smoke bombs wrapped in a cloth he'd torn off an old shirt. He took all of them. The paint bombs were underneath, 4 of them, red and blue, left over from a prank he'd been planning before everything went sideways. Smoke bombs X8 has been added to inventory. Paint bombs X4 has been added to inventory. Medicinal kit was under the bed. He dropped to one knee and reached into the dark, fingers finding the worn strap immediately. He dragged it out and flipped it open on the mattress, checking by habit. Bandages. Antiseptic. Soldier pills. Only 2 left. He needed to get more. Needle and thread still sealed. He snapped it shut and held it out. Medical kit X1 has been added to inventory. The cloak was the last thing from inside. It was hanging on the back of the bedroom door where he always left it, treated with a chakra reactive dye that responded to the transformation jutsu and helped the illusion hold against trained eyes. Then he stepped out onto the balcony. It was the one part of the apartment that wasn't a disaster. He'd started it small, just a few pots he'd found abandoned outside the building, soil he'd carried up 4 flights of stairs in a bucket. But it had grown over the years into something he didn't have a word for. Rows of mismatched containers lined the railing, clay pots, old cans, and one cracked bowl he'd wired back together rather than throw away. Every one of them had something growing in it. Yarrow first. He pulled a generous handful of the dried flower heads, the ones he'd hung upside down last month specifically for this. Good for bleeding. He'd learned that the hard way after a prank went wrong 3 years ago, and he'd spent a night figuring out how to stop a cut on his arm from soaking through everything he pressed against it. Dried yarrow has been added to inventory. Ginger root next. 2 thick pieces he'd been drying on the balcony ledge. Good for pain, nausea, and the kind of deep bone ache that came after the body had taken more than it was meant to. Dried ginger root X2 has been added to inventory. He went back down the row and stripped every medicinal herb bare. Oscar was worth more than a careful harvest. He stood at the railing for a moment, hands loose at his sides, looking out over the village. Rooftops and lamplight and the distant shape of the Hokage monument carved into the mountainside. 4 faces looking out over everything they'd built and everyone they'd left behind. He turned away from the balcony and went back inside. The jacket was draped over the back of his desk chair where Iruka had left it after his last birthday, still folded the way it had been when it came out of the wrapping. Navy blue, slightly too big for him, which Iruka had said was intentional because you'll grow into it. Naruto had worn it exactly twice since then. He picked it up and held it for a moment. Then he started lining the inside with explosive tags. It took him 4 minutes and every tag he had left. The plan had come to him while he was stripping the balcony, the way his best ideas usually did, arriving fully formed and slightly unhinged. He would wear this suicide jacket and make shadow clones. Each one wearing exactly what he wore, jacket included, identical down to the last detail the way only shadow clones could manage. And then he would send them running straight at the demon. In the half-second before the demon figured out what it was holding. Boom. Kamikaze shadow clone jutsu. Naruto pressed his lips together very hard and failed to stop the grin. It was certainly a plan. Explosive tag jacket X1 has been added to inventory. Sorry, Iruka-sensei. You'll have to get me a new one for my birthday. Naruto smiled at the thought and grabbed the cup noodles. You are going to enjoy these, sensei. He stood in the middle of the apartment and realized, for the first time since he'd burst through the door, that he had absolutely no idea how to get back to the asylum. He looked at the ceiling. Then, because nothing else came to mind, so he raised his fist into the air and announced to the world, "Send me back to the Northern Undead Asylum." Silence. Somewhere outside, a crow cawed in the distance. "Shut up," Naruto told it. He turned back to the room, cup noodle still in hand, heat crawling up his neck so fast he was surprised smoke wasn't coming off his ears. His hand tightened around the cup out of pure frustration and it shimmered away before he'd even decided to store it. Oscar's words came to his head. The dark sign does not simply mark you. It defines what you are in this world. Death triggers it. It returns you to the last bonfire you rested at. Do I need the dark sign to go back? As if on cue, a system window blinked open in front of him. Item. Dark sign. Description. The dark sign signifies an accursed undead. Those branded with it are reborn after death, but will one day lose their mind and go hollow. Death triggers the dark sign, which returns its bearer to the last bonfire rested at, but at the cost of all humanity and souls. Closing square bracket. Do I have to die to use this? The thought sat in his chest with a particular kind of weight. He could do it again if he had to. But before he'd finished the thought, a second window opened beneath the first. Do you wish to use item, dark sign? Closing square bracket. Yes, no. Naruto let out a breath that was almost a laugh and pressed yes. The back of his neck erupted. The burn drove him to one knee before he could brace for it, a searing heat that moved outward from his spine in waves, each one worse than the last. He grabbed the edge of the desk with one hand and held on as the sigil spread across the floor beneath him, yellow light carving itself into two concentric circles, symbols forming in the space between them. The light built until he couldn't see the room anymore. Until he couldn't see anything. But even through the pain, through the white consuming everything, one thought cut clean and clear. Don't worry, sensei. He felt himself coming apart at the edges, the apartment dissolving, Konoha dissolving, and everything falling away into the light. Your squire is coming. We're going to kick that demons. And then we're eating ramen, Datbeo. The light took him. Naruto's messy apartment settled into silence after he vanished, the faint shimmer of the dark sign fading from the floorboards like the last ember of a dying fire. It didn't stay silent for long. A figure shimmered into existence on the ceiling. Anbu Owl had been assigned to Uzumaki Naruto by the Hokage himself less than an hour ago, with a single directive that had seemed straightforward at the time. Observe. Report. Do not interfere unless the subject's life is in immediate danger. He had expected a troubled 12-year-old to go home, eat something, and cry. Instead, he had watched the subject systematically strip his apartment of every weapon, explosive, and medicinal supply he owned, store all of it using an unknown space-time technique, tend to a balcony garden with the focused efficiency of a field medic preparing for a siege, line a jacket with explosive tags, and then stand in the middle of the room and attempt to verbally summon a teleportation. Owl had been Anbu for 6 years. He had seen things that had permanently rearranged his understanding of what was possible. He updated his report without moving a muscle. Subject has demonstrated using an unclassified long-range space-time technique. Technique bears surface resemblance to reverse summoning jutsu but does not match any documented variant in Konoha's classification system. Subject shows no signs of surprise or difficulty during activation, suggesting prior familiarity with the technique. Unknown summoning clan affiliation cannot be ruled out. Subject's current location, unknown. Subject's destination, unknown. Owl looked at the floorboards and the concentric circles burned into the wood. At the symbols carved between them in a fuinjutsu language he did not recognize and had never seen in any scroll, any briefing, or any classified file he had ever been cleared to read. This is going to be a very complicated report. While Owl was in thought, something toward him from the shadows below. He jumped backward and drew his tanto in one motion, slashing through it. The tendril split apart and dissolved into a liquid, leaving only a faint smear of ink on the blade. What shinobi uses ink for their ninjutsu? The answer came from the dark in the form of a body moving very fast. The figure that rushed him was young, barely older than Naruto himself if the build was anything to go by. A plain white mask covered his face entirely. Their blades met with a sharp ring of steel. Owl held the bind for half a second, reading and assessing the enemy. Whoever this was, they had learned to fight on the field. He threw a smoke bomb and broke for the window. Suddenly a foot connected with his chest from outside and drove him back into the room hard enough to rattle the shelving. Ceiling jutsu. Crouched tiger bullet. Owl turned in time to see an ink illustration of a tiger on the scroll. As the hand signs completed, the drawing peeled itself free of the paper and lunged. The Anbu went for the swing. When a kunai took him clean in the hand. And the tanto was on the floor before he had consciously registered getting bit by a 3-dimensional drawing. The tiger dragged him backward into the scroll, the ceiling jutsu folding around him, pinning him flat within the confines of the illustration. He wasn't going anywhere. Excellent work as always. The voice came from the window. The young man who dropped into the apartment had auburn hair and amber eyes. A short black jacket with red shoulder straps that Owl recognized immediately and with a particular sinking feeling. Root. Thank you, Fu-senpai, the one with the faceless mask said while removing his mask. A 13-year-old kid with short black hair and dark eyes. Skin pale enough to look like it hadn't quite decided to commit to being a color. Agent Sai. Create a report for Lord Danzo regarding the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Be thorough. Fu crouched beside the pinned Anbu. While I make this Anbu into my puppet. Owl wanted to activate his suicide seal. He couldn't move his chakra. The sealing jutsu pressed down on his chakra points. That included the specific 2 points he needed to activate the seal that would have ended this cleanly. He strained against it, and got nothing back. Fu's fingers pressed to his temple. Owl understood then, exactly what was about to happen. False reports would reach the Hokage. Konoha's picture of tonight would be built on whatever Fu decided to put in it. And the Hokage would move on that picture, make decisions on it, trust it. He couldn't stop any of it. He could only hope Konoha was ready for the storm that was approaching. Far away from Konoha, hidden deep within a rugged mountain range, lay a small, secluded temple. From the outside it looked like any ordinary place of worship. Ancient stone pillars standing stoic against the weathered landscape. Moss creeping up the walls in patient increments. The Fire Zen Temple. A remote location where banished shinobi who were too dangerous to be left free, yet too valuable to be discarded, were sent to live out their days in carefully managed obscurity. In a small garden to the east of the main building, a man knelt in the dirt. He was old and frail in the way a blade left to rust still cuts. Shaggy black hair hung limply around a face marked by an X-shaped scar on the chin. He wore a simple white shirt beneath a dark robe that covered him from his feet to just over his right shoulder. And he was pressing pumpkin seeds into the earth with his bare hands, one by one. Behind him stood 2 shinobi guards. The picture they composed was almost convincing. To the outside world, Shimura Danzo had been broken. Stripped of his influence, exiled to this remote temple, and watched around the clock by loyal Konoha operatives. The War Hawk of Konoha, the boogeyman of the shinobi world, reduced to gardening in isolation while the village he had shaped from the shadows moved on without him. That was the story Konoha told itself. The truth was considerably more inconvenient. Danzo had taken control of Fire Zen Temple within 6 months of his arrival. The guards behind him were not Konoha's men. The reports filed about his behavior were not accurate. The isolation was a costume he wore with the same ease he wore everything else, as a tool, as a performance, and as a means to an end that nobody outside these walls was yet equipped to see. A root Anbu appeared at the garden's edge without sound. Speak. Danzo-sama. A report from our agents in Konoha. Danzo continued pressing seeds into the earth with the other hand while his eye moved across the page. He had long ago trained himself to read without expression, to let information arrive and settle before allowing it to mean anything. He reached a specific section and stopped. Confirmed space-time ninjutsu. Unknown summoning clan. Subject departed to unconfirmed location via unknown technique. Hokage has authorized Anbu observation. Intelligence remains incomplete. He read those last 4 words again. Intelligence remains incomplete. Danzo set the report down in his lap and looked at the garden. The pumpkin seeds he had planted would take weeks to show anything. You pressed them into the earth, then you waited. The waiting was where most of the work actually happened, underneath the surface. Your command, Danzo-sama. Activate all sleeper agents currently embedded within Konoha. Their objective is to keep Konoha from truly understanding Uzumaki Naruto. Danzo pressed the last seed into the earth and smoothed the soil over it with 2 fingers. I do not need Konoha blind. I need Konoha working with half a picture. The Root Anbu bowed without a word. A shinobi operating on incomplete information does not sit still. Danzo knew this the way he knew everything about Hiruzen Sarutobi, from decades of watching the man govern from a place of love rather than logic. Love made a man predictable. Love made a man fill silences with his worst fears rather than his best intelligence. And fear, applied correctly, was the most reliable weapon in any arsenal. Hiruzen feared what he couldn't understand. He feared losing what he loved. And he feared, above all else, making the same mistake twice. Let him be afraid of what the boy is becoming, Danzo thought quietly. Let him pour everything he has into understanding abilities he has no framework for. Let him scramble. His eye moved to the tree line. To the distance where Konoha sat warm and unsuspecting in the dark. Search all you like, Sarutobi. His hand rested briefly on the doorframe, the temple swallowing his shadow as he stepped inside. By the time you understand what that boy is, he will already be mine. And through him, everything he has become will serve this village. Danzo let the door close behind him. As it always should have. The crackling of the bonfire entered his ears before anything else did. The bright flash of the dark sign faded from his vision in patches. The familiar warmth pressed against him from all sides. He did not know how a sword embedded in ash and bone managed to produce that feeling. He had stopped questioning it somewhere between the first hollow and the magic ring. RRRAAAAGHHHHKK. The asylum demon filled the gap beyond the large open doors. Naruto had approximately 1 second to process this before the demon swung his hammer. Both doors tore free of their hinges simultaneously, each one becoming a massive projectile. The first door crossed the courtyard and hit the far wall at full velocity. Stone exploded outward in a cascade of dust and rubble. The wall folded inward before the force punched through it entirely, chunks the size of a grown man's torso raining down across the courtyard floor. The pillars caught the worst of the shockwave and simply came apart, the upper section tilting sideways in slow, terrible increments before hitting the ground. The demon surveyed its work. While Naruto held perfectly still against the wall beside the doorway, cloak pulled tight around him. Ninja art. The cloak of invisibility jutsu. It was a generous name for being just the transformation jutsu applied through a cloak treated with chakra reactive dye. The dye responded to a sustained chakra flow, bending light around the wearer. A simple camouflage technique that any halfway decent genin could spot if they were looking for it. Against a demon that was specifically waiting for a boy to dramatically explode out of the rubble and attack it. It was enough. The demon made a sound of dissatisfaction and turned back toward its area, squeezing its massive frame through the ruined doorway and disappearing from view. Naruto let out a breath he had been holding for the last minute. He stayed still for another 10 seconds. Then he moved toward the hidden door set into the courtyard's eastern wall, partially obscured by the debris from the demon's entrance and easy to miss. He pulled a senbon from his inventory and crouched in front of the lock. It took him 40 seconds to lockpick the old rusted door and rush up the stairs to the second floor. Naruto was looking for any signs of Oscar when the knight's crest ignited on pure instinct, his awareness snapping upward as he saw it. An iron ball coming down the upper staircase toward him. The boy backflipped, letting the ball pass beneath him before it hit the wall behind him and took a section of it clean out. Didn't I encounter this exact same trap last time? The hollow that ran down was, without any question, the same one Oscar had cut down in this exact spot the last time they had walked this floor together. What is going on here? Naruto stepped to the side and decapitated it in one motion, the Astora straight sword already back in guard before the body had finished falling. He held his hand out and felt the soul absorb into his skin. Maybe the world fixed up any damage after a while. He filed it away and kept moving. This world had rules he did not understand yet. Sensei, where are you? Silence. Then, from somewhere past the broken wall, barely audible over the distant sounds of the demon below. Naruto. The boy was through the gap in the wall before the sound had finished reaching him. The room beyond was small and half collapsed, rubble piled against the far wall where something had impacted it with tremendous force. Sunlight came through a hole in the ceiling in shafts that fell on Oscar. The knight lay motionless on the rubble. The blue surcoat was dark with something Naruto did not want to look at directly. Naruto's legs carried him across the rubble, his knees hitting the stone hard as he dropped beside Oscar. Up close, it was worse. Sensei. You're alive. Yeah. Naruto's voice came out smaller than he intended. He wiped his face with the back of his hand and tried again. Yeah, I'm alive. I woke up back in my world, Sensei. Found out a whole lot of things about myself. He attempted a grin. But none of that matters right now because I'm here and we're going to beat that demon and then you're going to eat the food of the gods, Dadbeo. Oscar's chest moved in a silent laugh. Food of the gods, the knight repeated, faint and fraying at the edges. Ramen, Naruto said firmly. Trust me. I am sorry, Naruto. What for? Naruto was already pulling the medical kit from his inventory, hands moving fast, trying to look for injuries. Do not apologize, just tell me where it hurts the most and all. Save them. Oscar's hand moved slightly. Save them, for yourself. Oh, one more thing. Here, take this. You have obtained an Estus flask. I got these for you. Naruto said, ignoring the message as his hands were shaking badly enough that the medicinal pills rattled in their container. He pressed them still against his knee. Come on, calm down, so you don't get to tell me to save them. That's not how this works. Naruto, I am, beyond this. I can feel it. A pause that went on long enough that Naruto's chest tightened. My mind, it is already, slipping. I will go hollow, soon. What does that mean? When humans die, they can rise again as undead. The curse sees to that. Oscar's breathing was shallow and deliberate. An undead can die multiple times. But every death takes their memories. The pieces of yourself that make you who you are. Until nothing remains but the shell. An undead turns into a hollow. You mean, you're going to become like those things in the asylum? Oscar said nothing. Then we go back. The words came out before Naruto had finished thinking them. Sensei, we go back to Konoha. I'll beg the old man to help you. We'll figure something out. There has to be something. Naruto. There has to be. Naruto. Everything blurred through Naruto's tears. We all must stop at the end of our journey, someday, Oscar said. Please. Sensei. Please don't go. Please don't. Don't leave me. I am sorry, my squire. I cannot keep my promise. That did it. The tears broke free all at once, streaming down his face faster than he could wipe them away. Naruto clenched his jaw until it ached, trying to hold the rest of it in, trying to be something other than a kid sitting in the rubble of a broken asylum crying over a friend dying. It was unfair. Do not cry, Naruto. Oscar's voice had that faint edge to it. Be brave. I'm trying. Naruto pressed the back of his hand against his mouth. I'm trying, Sensei, I don't know how. I don't know how to do this. Bravery is not the absence of fear or pain. It is standing despite them. This world is cruel, Naruto. It does not deserve your innocent tears. Oscar's voice was thinning at the edges. Standing tall, when everything falls. That is what it means. Naruto wiped his face with the back of his hand. Then the other hand. His eyes were swollen and burning. He could not make himself stop entirely, but he sat up straighter, his spine finding something to brace against. I'll be brave, sensei, he whispered. I will. I promise. A silence settled between them. Naruto's body was shaking from the thing building in his chest that wanted to become a scream. That wanted to send him charging at the asylum demon with everything he had left until one of them stopped existing. Naruto. Oscar's voice cut through the fog. Yes, sensei. The bonfire sword. A pause. Bring it to me. Yes, sir. Naruto did not ask why. He just formed the hand sign and hundreds of clones burst into existence, flooding out of the room and down into the courtyard below, their voices rising in a chorus of battle cries as they swarmed the asylum demon from every direction. The sound of the fight rolled up through the stone like thunder. While the demon's attention pulled entirely toward the wave of clones climbing its legs and throwing themselves at its face, the original crossed the courtyard, both hands closing around the coil sword buried in the bonfire's ash, and pulled. He was back at Oscar's side before the last clone had finished popping. Thank you, Oscar said. Sometime while Naruto had been gone, Oscar had removed his armor. The elite knight set lay in pieces around him, arranged with a care that hurt to look at, each piece placed deliberately despite everything. What remained was just a hollow-faced, blonde-haired man. He did not look smaller without the armor. Sensei, what are you going to do with this sword? Die as Oscar the knight. Rather than wander, as a mindless hollow. Oscar's eyes found Naruto's and held. It is a better end. You understand. Naruto pressed his lips together and nodded once, because Oscar deserved a dignified death even if Naruto would have fought tooth and nail to find another way. I leave my armor to you. No, sensei, I can't. Naruto. It is the dream of every knight to pass their blade and armor to their squire. A breath that cost him. To know that what they carried will be carried forward. He reached up slowly, both hands lifting the helmet, his arms trembling with the effort. This is my wish. Naruto took it with both hands. It sat on his head and dropped immediately down over his eyes. Oscar snorted. It seems you will have to grow into it. Despite everything, Naruto laughed too. Wet and broken, yet real. What followed was slow and careful and tender in a way that Naruto knew he would never have words for. Listen closely, my squire, Oscar said while guiding him through each piece. A knight performing a knightly duty to the very end. The precepts of a knight of Astora. Naruto nodded. A knight's purpose is to serve. To stand between those who cannot protect themselves, and the things that would destroy them. Not for glory, not for reward, because it is right. The boy carved it in. The dozen precepts that followed, Naruto carved those in too. And finally, Oscar gathered himself. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped to almost nothing, and Naruto had to lean until their foreheads were nearly touching to catch it. A knight does not measure himself by how brightly he burns. He measures himself by how long he keeps the flame alive. When everything is dark, when he is alone, when there is no one left to see him stand. The gaps between words were very long now. That is when it matters most. Silence. Now, stand tall for me. Naruto looked like a child wearing an older man's armor. Yet Oscar looked at him. Something in his expression traveled a great distance and arrived somewhere peaceful. You have equipped the elite knight armor set. The armor began to shrink. The leather warming against his skin, the straps drawing in, the plates finding the angles of his shoulders, chest and legs like they were remembering a shape they had always been meant to hold. When it finished, the armor fit him like it had been made for him. Naruto looked down at his hands inside the gauntlets. I said you would grow into it. A pause long enough that Naruto thought that was all. I did not mean, quite so quickly. I also once got stuck in a trash can for 40 minutes trying to prank the old man. The armor probably figured I could not do worse than that. Perhaps it simply recognized a future night. A very short night. The best ones often are. They laughed together. The silence that followed was different from the ones before it. Naruto looked at his master and felt something settle over him that he did not have a word for yet. He had spent his whole life cataloging the people around him without meaning to. The third Hokage was a grandfather. Iruka was the cool older brother. Tsuki was the uncle and Ayame was the big sister. He had never had a father. He had never let himself want one badly enough to name the wanting. But watching the light go slowly out of the eyes of this man, Naruto understood with a quiet and complete certainty that Oscar had become exactly that. Not because of time or anything that could be measured. Just because of how it felt to be seen, taught and chosen by him. And now he was going to lose him. Help me, Oscar said quietly. I do not have the strength. His hands were shaking when he helped Oscar lift the coiled sword. Together they guided the blade and Naruto kept his eyes open because Oscar deserved a witness. Looking away would have been the easier thing and Oscar had taught him that easy and right were not the same. The sword found its place in Oscar's chest with a squelch sound. Regrettably, I have failed in my mission. But perhaps you can keep the torch lit. There is an old saying in my family. Thou who art undead, art chosen. In thine exodus from the undead asylum, maketh pilgrimage to the land of ancient lords. When thou ringeth the bell of awakening, the fate of the undead thou shalt know. Well, now you know. And I can die with hope in my heart. Was that your dream, sensei? Oscar nodded. Then I'll carry it. I will become the chosen undead. I swear it. Datbeo. Oscar looked at him for a long moment. I could not have asked for a better squire. Naruto looked down. The burning sensation had started across Oscar's skin, yet the man asked. What is the matter? Do I deserve this, sensei? The words came out louder than he intended. Back home I am a failure. People hate me for something I did not do. I have lost count of how many times I have fallen short of everything I was supposed to be. He swallowed. I do not want to fail this. Your dream. Your legacy. This. He choked on whatever word was supposed to come next and gave up trying to find it. You will not fail. There was no hesitation in Oscar's voice. Not even a pause. Naruto smiled at that. The flames were spreading now, moving up from Oscar's hands, climbing slowly. One last thing, Naruto. Yes. Live for yourself. Each word arrived separately now as Oscar's dying words. Not to prove something, to someone else. Not to earn what should have always been yours. The world is yours. Do not spend it looking for permission to exist in it. Naruto's throat closed. I promise, he managed. The light left Oscar's eyes the way light leaves a room when the last candle goes out. Gradual. Then complete. Naruto knelt beside his master in the rubble of the broken asylum and cried without trying to be brave about it, without trying to be anything about it. Just a boy in grief. Just 2 words that were not enough and were all he had. Thank you, sensei. Goodbye. Name. Naruto Uzumaki. Weapons. R Weapon 1. Astora's straight sword. R weapon 2, Pyromancy flame. L weapon 1, crest shield. L weapon 2, fists. Armor. Head. Elite knight helm. Chest. Elite knight armor. Hands. Elite knight gauntlets. Feet. Elite knight leggings. R weapon 1, 96. R weapon 1, 174. Equip load. 10.0, 51.0. Equip load. 29.8, 52, 57.31%. HP. 573 573 HP, 594. Stamina. 93, Stamina. 95. Physical defense. 73, 20, Physical defense. 118. Magic defense. 73, 13, Magic defense. 60. Flame defense. 99, 21, Flame defense. 67. Lightning defense. 59, 16, Lightning defense. 54. Poise. Oh, poise. 49. Bleed resist. 104, bleed resist. 101. Poison resist. 194, poison resist. 72. Curse resist. 35, curse resist. 30. The elite knight armor was the heaviest thing Naruto had ever worn. He took 3 steps and stopped. Naruto did the mental math of how long it was going to take him to cross the asylum at this pace and arrived at an answer he did not like. He thought about Oscar moving fast in this armor, cutting and rolling with fluid efficiency. Sensei, just how strong were you? Naruto looked down at the armor. Should I take this off for now? The thought lasted approximately 3 seconds before he remembered whose hands had buckled every strap. Yeah. No. Then the boy remembered. It had been a Thursday afternoon in the academy, one of the rare sessions where Iruka had put down the chalk and actually looked like he was about to say something worth remembering. He had held up a single leaf. Chakra control is the foundation of everything you will ever do as a shinobi. He had pressed the leaf flat against his forehead. Channeling chakra into your muscles with enough control and your body becomes stronger. Not stronger in the way that training makes you stronger. Stronger in the way that a river is stronger than rain. Naruto had fallen asleep approximately 4 minutes after that. He was regretting that now. Still, he formed the ram sign and pushed chakra into his legs first, then his shoulders. The load became manageable. 15 minutes, he thought. Probably less if I am being honest with myself. My chakra control has always been the thing everyone laughed at. He kept moving and reached the upper floor. The hollows came out of the shadows with their rusted blades already swinging. Clang. The sword bounced against the chest plate and Naruto swung the Astora straight sword in a single sweeping arc. The hollows in front of him stopped being a problem. Guess that is the benefit of wearing armor. He absorbed the souls without stopping. A faint whistle reached him from his left. The knight's sight activated, the arrow now visible at the very edge of his far peripheral field. Naruto pivoted and lunged in one motion, the blade driving into the hollow archer's chest before the second arrow had finished being knocked. He absorbed the soul without stopping and walked to the ledge that dropped into the arena below. Naruto took a breath. Hey! The demon looked up, red eyes finding him on the ledge above, and something shifted in its expression. Recognition maybe. Or appetite. The distinction did not matter much either way. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Squire of Oscar of Astora. You'd my master. The demon made a sound low in its chest. Prepare to die. He leapt. The air rushed around him, the world narrowing to a single point, the Astora straight sword raised high above his head in both hands. The blade drove into the demon's skull with a sound that echoed off every wall of the asylum. Round 2. You ugly bastard. Name. Asylum Demon. HP. 1900 2195. Dark blood welled up around the steel, thick and steaming in the cold air. The demon made a sound, its entire frame shuddering, and then it jerked its head. Naruto hit the courtyard floor at high speed, rolled, and came up in a crouch with the sword. He looked up. The plunge attack had taken the demon's left eye clean out. Its remaining red eye found him. The hammer came up. You're going to try the same move again. Naruto threw the smoke bomb to the ground, and a thick cloud enveloped the arena. The demon took the bait, lunging straight into the smoke. That was when his clones moved, their shield formation snapping into place. The hammer came down hard, colliding with the shields. Boom! The kamikaze shadow clone plan worked. Even though the yield of the clone explosives was weaker than the original explosive tags, the sheer number of clones made up for it. The blast threw the demon backward. Its hammer shattered into pieces, fragments flying everywhere. The force was so strong that the demon stumbled back, arms flailing, its ugly head jerking wildly. Before it could even process what had happened, Naruto hurled a Fuma shuriken from behind one of the pillars. He watched it spin through the air, slicing straight toward the demon's face in a perfect arc. Just a little more. The demon's head jerked back to dodge, and Naruto shouted, "Kai!" The flashbangs attached to the Fuma shuriken erupted with a blinding light. The demon let out a guttural howl as the brilliant flash seared its vision, stumbling backward, its massive hands flying up to clutch its face in agony. The demon thrashed wildly, disoriented. Now, from the top floor, two clones stood tall. On either side of the arena, hidden amongst pots and pillars, were clones, their hands glowing with pyromancy flames. The barrage of fireballs consumed the demon. Blisters rose and burst across its hide. Where the sword wounds crossed the burns, the flesh had stopped trying to hold itself together, the edges blackened and pulling apart. Blood ran from its wounds in slow, dark sheets, pooling in the cracks between the courtyard stones. Name: Stray Demon. HP: 902,195. The Asylum Demon had destroyed the mental chains that once held it down. Chains forged by gods to bind the demon's soul is the first major trial of the chosen undead. Maybe these flames reminded the demon of its home. Izalith, the land of chaos and demons. The demon's eyes locked onto Naruto. Naruto gripped the Astora straight sword in his right hand, while his left held the crest shield firmly in place. "I'm ready. Come on, you bastard, make your move." It did not attack. Instead, the demon slammed its staff into the ground with a force so powerful that the floor beneath them crumbled. They crashed into the basement of the asylum. The room was a massive circular chamber with a weathered stone floor. Broken tiles lay scattered everywhere, and stone pillars loomed around him. Naruto looked around, his breath catching in his throat when he realized the truth. The entire asylum was built around this demon's cage. Naruto did not have time to consider the implications of the thought. The demon swung its staff in a wide horizontal sweep that filled the entire width of the chamber. The basement walls were too close and the staff was too wide, and there was simply nowhere for a boy in full plate armor to be that was not directly in the path of it. Damn it! He slammed through the hand sign. Ninja art. Substitution jutsu. A puff of white smoke swallowed the space where Naruto had been as he appeared behind the demon. The substitution jutsu was not a teleportation jutsu. It just looked like one. That was the entire point. A shinobi moved fast, left something behind in the space they had just vacated, and let the brain of whoever was watching fill in the rest. The brain wanted an explanation for what it had just seen, and the smoke gave it one that was not the truth. A simple deception dressed up as something more impressive than it was. With the help of the inventory, what Naruto had left behind was the iron ball, 12 explosive tags pressed flat against its surface. The demon's staff was already committed to the swing. The detonation filled the basement in a violent flash, the shockwave slamming off all four walls at once and doubling back on itself. The iron ball turned into shrapnel, peppering the demon's body from point-blank range. The demon dropped to one knee. Naruto rushed forward, as an opening was an opening. In response, the demon's hand swept across the floor and came up with a fistful of stone and debris and threw it. Naruto caught the spread in the knight's sight and understood immediately that there was no gap to move through. The debris covered too much space. He pulled the shield up hard against his forearm. The impact hit him like the asylum wall had hit the doors. He was airborne before the pain registered, and the pain registered before he hit the pillar, and hitting the pillar reset everything. He ran a quick inventory. His shield arm was broken between the elbow and the wrist. At least 2 ribs had pierced his internal organs. His vision was providing stars in quantities that made it functionally useless. Naruto stopped trying to see through his own eyes and just closed them. The knight's sight came out in full effect as it locked onto the demon. Get up, he thought. His body submitted a formal objection. The demon's staff hit the ground, and Naruto knew what that meant. Get up. Naruto threw himself into the corner of the chamber and the red orb detonated behind him. The blast radius swallowed everything that was not the corner, the pressure wave slamming into him, heat washing over the armor, debris clattering off the plate like an argument. Naruto saw the demon's grinning face. It was enjoying watching him struggle and suffer. Oh, that made the boy's blood boil. You think this is funny? You overgrown sack of shit. Naruto growled as he bit into the soldier pills. The pills were made up of powerful stimulants and nutrients that were near instantly absorbed into the intake's body, and were said to allow the user to keep fighting for 3 days and 3 nights without rest or sleep. The soldier pills and the knight's sight were doing something interesting together. Everything had slowed. Not actually, he knew that, but the combination of the stimulants pushing his mind past its normal ceiling and his crest produced something that felt like time stretching at the edges. He could see the demon's weight shift before the movement committed as it prepared a brutal stab. Naruto timed the stab and jumped. His feet hit the staff the moment it drove into the wall, already running up the length of it. The demon had not processed what was happening yet, its weight still locked into the recovery from the thrust, and Naruto used every fraction of that window. He leapt from the end of the staff. Everything Oscar had drilled into him in that asylum courtyard compressed into a heavy cut aimed at the demon's remaining eye. The demon roared, snapping its jaws at Naruto. He was ready for it. A shadow clone launched him backward midair just as the demon's mouth closed in, exploding with a deafening boom inside its gaping maw. Chunks of flesh and teeth sprayed from the explosion as the demon's lower jaw ripped apart into a gruesome mess. The demon's roar was now a garbled mess of pain, more like a guttural growl than anything resembling a scream. The demon slammed its staff into a nearby pillar. Naruto read it as desperation. A blind demon trying to bring the ceiling down to take him down. He was wrong. The knight's sight caught the red glow building behind him. Naruto spun and dozens of shadow clones burst into existence in the space between him and the detonation, shields locking together in a wall that took the explosion full on before dissolving into smoke all at once. The chamber went white for a moment. Then Naruto heard the flap of wings. He looked up. The sound of wings filled the chamber. Naruto looked up just in time to see the demon reach the apex and fold its wings inward. That, Naruto thought, watching several tons of demon begin its descent, is a lot of coming down very fast. His fingers were already flying through the hand signs. At the last second, he flickered away, leaving behind a very special gift. A Fuma shuriken embedded into the floor. And the demon landed on it. Naruto did not even have time to savor the moment before he shouted, "Kai!" activating the explosive tags wrapped around the shuriken's blade. The blast ripped through the demon's body. A mess of blood, entrails, and what looked like shredded organs sprayed out in all directions. Naruto tried not to vomit at the sight, but he could not tear his eyes away from the mess he had created. Part of him felt a flicker of sympathy for the monster, but then he remembered Oscar's precept burned into his mind. Precept number 5. Do not show sympathy for the enemy, for they shall show you none when you fall. No sympathy for a beast that would have torn me apart without a second thought. Naruto saw it flapping its wings again. The demon trying to fly away. Oh, hell no. You're not getting away, not after everything you've done. Datbeo. The demon shot through the hole in the ceiling, its wings catching the open air above the asylum, rising fast and getting higher. Naruto jumped toward it but felt the distance growing between them. Ninja art. Shadow clone jutsu. The clone grabbed him by the back of the armor and threw him upward with every ounce of strength it had before dissolving into smoke. The demon was still above him. The armor was too heavy and gravity had opinions and he was already losing altitude before he had finished gaining it. I've got it. A kunai blade tore through the membrane of the demon's wing, and the ninja wire attached to it went taut the instant it hit, pulled by the weight of a boy in full plate armor dropping through open air. The wing failed to generate enough lift against the drag of Naruto's weight pulling down while the demon's momentum carried it forward. They began to spiral, the demon's roar mixing with the wind, the ground rising toward them from a direction Naruto was trying not to think about. He yanked the ninja wire hard. The tension inverted, gravity doing the rest, pulling the demon down while Naruto swung upward along the wire's arc, his body describing a clean parabola that placed him above the demon for exactly the window he needed. The Astora straight sword appeared in his free hand, the blade leveled downward at the demon's skull. The demon pointed its staff at him. The red orb formed at the tip, the chaos fire building with an intensity that turned the air around it the color of a wound. Staring at what could be his end, Naruto's mind seemed to replay everything that had led him into this moment. He thought about a knight sitting beside a bonfire in a broken courtyard, explaining the age of fire to a boy from another world like it was the most natural conversation two people could have. He thought about the man who had died with hope in his heart because his squire had promised to carry the torch. I told you I would. I will you. Chakra erupted from every tenketsu in his body simultaneously, wrapping around him in a cloak. The greenish gemstone of the Astora straight sword caught the light of his conviction as the faith enchantment answered in a white luminescence building from the base of the blade upward, edge to tip. White and blue wrapped into a visage of Oscar beside Naruto. The boy did not know if it was the soldier pills doing something creative with his brain chemistry or the exhaustion or the grief or some combination of all three. But he found that he did not need to know. Oscar stood beside him for this final attack. The collision was a conversation between two forces that hated each other. Maybe it was Oscar's armor protecting him, or his chakra cloak, or maybe it was a combination of both. But Naruto did not stop. White and blue converging at the edge of the sword aimed at the skull of a demon in a broken asylum at the end of a promise. Oscar and Naruto's combo, Lion's Claw. The impact cratered the chamber stone, cracks tearing outward in every direction at once, a wave of dust and debris rolling across the entire space before breaking against the walls. The demon's body lay still, the broken blade of Astora lodged deep in its skull, the once pristine steel now shattered from the final blow. Naruto sat there, panting, barely able to keep himself upright. He had done it. He had won. He had slain the demon. The adrenaline left him all at once. He collapsed backward onto the demon's corpse, every nerve frayed and spent. His vision blurred as he lay there staring at the hole in the ceiling. It was over. The soul rose from the demon's body and gathered above him, swirling into a massive ball of light, pure white with a black shard at its core. Pulsing with energy, more beautiful and more terrifying than anything he had ever seen in either world. He raised his broken hand toward it. The smell of the corpse was horrible. Like rotting meat left out in the sun too long in a lather of sulfur and ash. It was the kind of smell that had him gagging every time he inhaled as the pain from his broken arm and internal injuries began to simmer. I need to get healed. Naruto held up the empty Estus flask, tilting it hopefully. Well, I do not have a bonfire to refill this thing, he thought, frustration bubbling. But before he could dwell on it, a heavy thud echoed through the room. Oh, come on, can't this place just give me a break? The figure stepped forward, and even in his half-dazed state, Naruto could not help but think, whoa, that's some badass armor. The intruder was clad in jet black armor. Twin horn-like protrusions jutted from the helmet, and layered plates covered the figure from head to toe. Name: Black Knight. HP: 1393. Naruto blinked as the Black Knight moved with blinding speed toward him. A smoke bomb hit the ground with a crack and smoke swallowed everything. The Black Knight's sword cleaved through the smoke cloud and the stray demon's corpse in one uninterrupted arc, splitting the massive body in half. The shockwave cleared the smoke around them. Choose gun safes. Nope. Naruto said it with a pop, already at the ladder. Jumping up, the boy found himself in a long, shadowed corridor. One end was sealed off by an empty jail cell, while the other had collapsed into rubble. From the layout, he guessed that twin halls of prison cells must have circled the chamber on each side. A metallic clanging snapped him out of his thoughts. The knight was climbing the ladder. Oh hell no, Naruto said, pushing the ladder and sending the knight back down to the floor below. He almost wanted to laugh and mock the knight, but he was in too much danger to act like his typical self. Something glowing glimpsed in the darkness of the cell caught his eye. Maybe that's something. He ran toward it, only to find a doll. It was a small bronze puppet that had long since turned green with age. Naruto turned it over in his hands, half expecting it to spring to life or whisper directions to a secret passage or do literally anything useful. It did nothing. What does this thing even do? The faint glow he had seen from across the cell was gone now, or maybe it had never been there and he was hallucinating it. Still, something about it feels important. Boom. The right wall of the corridor ceased to exist. The Black Knight jumped through the hole it had made. Naruto had approximately 1 second to register the massive Black Knight sword in motion. The doll shimmered into his inventory as the thrust came forward, aimed to split him clean in two. Naruto got his shield up, deflecting the blade to the side by a margin that he was choosing not to think about, and ran. The knight's sight fired. A spinning backhand cut came at head height from his right. He dropped low and felt the blade pass through the air where his skull had been a half-second earlier, the stone wall behind him taking the hit instead, the sword biting deep into the rock. Stuck. Naruto slapped an explosive tag onto the knight's chest and sprinted. The explosion filled the cell behind him, shaking the corridor, dust raining from the ceiling in sheets. He looked back. Name: Black Knight. HP: 1393. The Black Knight walked out of the smoke with no sign of damage. How does something take a point-blank explosive tag and just keep walking? Naruto kept running. I can't fight this thing. Even at full strength, with 2 working arms and a sword that had not been shattered, he was not confident he could put that thing down. Choose gun safes. Uruka-sensei, Naruto thought, said that a shinobi's greatest weapon was knowing when not to fight. He had said it during a lesson on tactical withdrawal, which was the academy's polite name for running away, and Naruto had rolled his eyes at that. Why would the Hokage run away from a strong enemy? I owe Iruka-sensei an apology. Naruto pulled the Fuma Shuriken from his inventory and hurled it at the knight. The Black Knight bisected it with a single swing without breaking stride. Naruto stopped running, turned around, and put his hands into the serpent sign as chakra became visible outside his body. Ah! The knight's shield came up immediately, its whole frame dropping into a defensive posture. Naruto stared at it. So, it does have some form of intelligence. Ah! He screamed again with the full commitment of someone preparing to do an enormous and devastating jutsu. He then jumped out of the hole in the wall. The Black Knight seemed to register a second too late that nothing had happened and nothing was going to happen. It had just been outwitted by a screaming 12-year-old. It jumped after him, and found him standing in the chamber below surrounded by 30 shadow clones, every single one of them holding a smoke bomb and grinning with his face. Try finding us now, big guy. Every clone threw simultaneously. The chamber disappeared into black. What followed was the sound of the Black Knight finding clones with systematic efficiency. The first clone went down with a single swing that sent it popping into smoke before it had finished its attack. The second tried to stab from behind and got backhanded hard enough that it dissolved on impact. 3 clones attempted a coordinated rush from 3 angles and were dealt with in 2 swings. A clone threw a kunai directly at the knight's face. The sword bisected it midair. The explosive tag split with it, the seal formula dead before it could activate. By the time the smoke thinned, every clone was gone. The grappling hook caught the top of the chamber wall and Naruto dropped into the corridor on the other side before the last of the smoke had finished clearing. The hallway ahead of him was full of hollows who turned toward the sound of his landing with lurching attention. Behind him, the Black Knight jumped into the corridor. Seeing himself stuck between a rock and a hard place, Naruto kept running deeper into the hallway. Silence filled the chamber below. Then, from inside the demon's corpse, something moved. Naruto pulled himself out one-handed, trying very hard not to vomit. That is the second worst thing I have ever climbed into, Datbeo. He chose not to think about what the first was. From somewhere far above, an explosion rattled down through the stone, distant enough to be muffled but close enough to feel in the floor. A moment later the clone's last memory of a very short fight arrived. Naruto allowed himself a small, exhausted smile. Good. Let it think I am dead. He pulled the grappling hook from his inventory, aimed for the hole in the wall, and swung up. The black gates of the asylum waited at the end of the corridor beyond. Item. Big Pilgrim's Key. Description. Key to the inner door of the Undead Asylum main hall. Big key belonging to a chosen undead pilgrim. But this chosen undead knows not what this pilgrimage has in store. Closing square bracket. Discover fantasy books. Thanks for the ominous warning, Naruto mumbled at the system, not really caring about its dramatic tone right now. The door creaked open into a long cliff path. Moss covered everything it could reach, crawling up the broken stonework, softening the edges of old ruins that dotted the landscape on both sides. Now what? Naruto stood there for a moment with no answer to that question. The Bell of Awakening. The land of ancient lords. He did not know where either of those things were. But first, he needed to do this. Naruto found a patch of ground beside the asylum wall. He pulled a kunai and started to dig, one-handed. The work was harder than it should have been and mattered more because of it. When the grave was deep enough, he reached into his inventory and retrieved Oscar's corpse with both hands, broken arm protesting the weight which he ignored. He laid his master down carefully. Folded the hands the way he had seen it done in Konoha, in the funerals he had watched from a distance. He stepped back and looked at what he had done. It was not enough. It was never going to be enough. But it was what he had. Naruto found a flat stone nearby and dragged it to the head of the grave. He set it in place and picked up his kunai. He was not a particularly good writer under the best of circumstances, and these were not those. But he kept at it until every character was legible, until what he had put into the stone was real and could not be taken back. Oscar of Astora. Knight. Teacher. Friend. He gave his kindness freely. That is rarer than any blade. Naruto set the kunai down. And sat down in front of it, crossed his legs, and started talking. I got him, he said. His voice came out hoarse and smaller than he meant it to. Naruto pulled at a piece of dead grass near his knee. It was really close. You would have said my footwork was sloppy for most of it and you would have been right. He paused. The iron ball was my idea though. I think you would have liked that part. The wind moved across the cliff. I do not think I could have done it without you. I do not know if you were actually there or if it was just the drugs or whatever the Astora sword's blessing does, but it felt like you were there. He pressed the back of his hand against his mouth for a moment. So I am counting it. That was our victory. That was us against the demon. He pulled at another piece of dead grass. I am going to find the Bell of Awakening, he said. I do not know where it is. I do not know anything about this world really. You were supposed to be the one who. He stopped, swallowed and tried again. You were supposed to come with me. His voice cracked on the last word and that was it. A wave of grief hit him unlike anything in his entire life, and Naruto's first instinct was to look for someone to tell. There was no one. No Iruka to show up at the wrong moment and say exactly the right thing. No old man Hokage to sit across from him with his pipe and patience. No Tsuki to put a bowl in front of him to make him feel better. Just a 12-year-old boy with a feeling he had absolutely no tools for. He sat down hard in the dirt. He had spent his whole life learning to outrun feelings he could not understand. Fill the space they occupied with noise and motion until they could not find him anymore. It had worked, more or less. It was not working now. The grief was too big, immediate and specifically shaped. Naruto pressed his forehead to his knee and stopped trying to outrun it. He ugly cried. His shoulders shook. He made sounds he would have been mortified by under any other circumstances and did not care. There was no one to be composed for and nothing left to be composed with. He cried until his throat was raw. He cried until his eyes were swollen almost shut. He cried until his body ran out of the energy grief needed to express itself and settled into a deep, bone-heavy exhaustion that pressed down on him from every direction at once. CAWWW. Naruto jolted upright, his hand reaching for a weapon. CAWWW. The sound came from somewhere along the cliff edge, and curiosity did what it always did with Naruto, arriving before caution could stop it. He slowly walked toward the edge of the cliff. The world opened up before him in every direction at once. Vast and endless mountains with peaks lost in gray mist. This place is so beautiful and lonely at the same time. Naruto was still thinking it when the shadow fell over him. The crow was enormous, as dark as the night with a body the size of a carriage. Its talons were outstretched and descending toward him. It grabbed him before he finished the thought of moving. The world lurched as the cliff edge disappeared. Everything disappeared except the wind, and the talons locked around him. The mountains dropping away below at a speed that made his stomach attempt to relocate somewhere above his head. He did not scream. He wanted to scream. Okay. Calm down, Naruto. This bird is going to land somewhere. Birds always land. Just conserve your chakra. Get ready when it does, and do not look down, Dadbao. He looked down. That was a mistake. The bird flew for 3 days. Naruto ate from his inventory suspended in midair over landscapes that had no names he knew, drank water from a canteen he had to angle carefully to avoid it going straight up into his nose, and slept in shifts with his hands locked around the talons. Somewhere in those 3 days and the sheer relentless enormity of everything passing below him, his grief went quiet. Not gone. He could still feel it, sitting at the back of everything. On the third day the crow began to approach a place that caught Naruto's breath. A kingdom sprawling across the landscape below in a scale that made Konoha look like a small town sketch on a map. He stared at it with his mouth open and the wind pushing against his teeth. The crow twisted its path toward a circular structure perched on a cliff. The talons suddenly opened. He fell. The roll-on landing was instinctive and deeply unpleasant, dirt and stone scraping against the armor as he tumbled across the ground and came to a stop on his back staring at the gray sky. He lay there for a moment. A warmth moved through him from the inside out. Broken arm. Cracked ribs. 3 days of being in the sky in a giant crow's grip. The warmth seemed to heal his mind and body. Claim military discounts. Naruto closed his eyes, letting the magic do its thing. The Firelink shrine was hauntingly beautiful. Crumbling stone archways and pillars draped in moss and vines, concentric rings of stone surrounding the bonfire at its center. A dead gnarled tree stretched up toward a misty sky where pale blue light filtered through in shifting rays. A man sat near the bonfire. Full suit of dull chainmail. Short black hair. An expression that communicated clearly that he had seen everything the world had to offer and had arrived at the conclusion that none of it was particularly worth the effort. He did not look up when Naruto arrived. Just sat there with a hollow, broken stillness. Yo. Naruto hoped for friendly. After everything, seeing an actual human being was almost comforting enough to overlook the dead expression. Well, what do we have here? You must be a new arrival. The man still had not looked up. Let me guess. Fate of the undead, right? Well, you are not the first. But there is no salvation here. You would have done better to rot in the undead asylum. A pause. But too late now. Geez. Naruto muttered to himself. Real ray of sunshine. Still, he managed a crooked grin and raised a fist into the air, more tired than triumphant. Well, the undead asylum has been conquered. Datbeo. Something shifted in the man's face. Gone before Naruto could read it, replaced by the same hollow expression. Oh, so you defeated the asylum demon. Something in his tone suggested he found this mildly amusing lie. Yep. KKKK. Laugh it up. It is the truth. Sure it is, boy, the man said, still chuckling to himself. No undead has ever managed to that thing. Either you die, or you escape. Those are your only 2 options. Naruto bit his tongue so hard he tasted blood. Precept the 4th, he reminded himself. Show virtue of patience, humility, and honor through your actions. He took a breath. Whatever. Can you at least tell me where the Bell of Awakening is? There are actually 2 bells of awakening. One is up above, in the undead church. The other is far, far below, in the ruins at the base of Blighttown. Ring them both and something happens. The crestfallen warrior gave Naruto a mocking smile. Brilliant, right? Not much to go on. But I have a feeling that will not stop you. So off you go. It is why you came, is it not? To this accursed land of the undead. Ha 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 ha. Prick. Naruto muttered under his breath. All he wanted, right now, was to go home. To sit at Ichiraku's with both elbows on the counter and eat ramen until Tsuki told him he had had enough, which had never once actually happened. To take a warm bubble bath. To sleep in his own bed. Let's go back for now. He made the decision quietly and turned back toward the crestfallen warrior. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. An undead that actually has a name. In these parts, a name means nothing. Yeah, whatever. Naruto swung into palm in a hammer motion. I am going to call you older emo. Blank stare. Then back to the ground. Wow. Naruto thought, genuinely impressed. This guy is even more emo than Sasuke. How did I end up talking to someone more depressing than Sasuke? He shook his head and let his mind drift back to the actual problem. Getting home. The last time he had gone back to Konoha, how had that worked? The asylum demoned me, and then I woke up in Konoha. Download platform games. He turned that over carefully. Maybe that is the trick. The thought sat in his stomach in a way he did not entirely like. Alexander. Naruto nearly jumped out of his armor. What? You do not have to wait for my name, Alexander said. It is Alexander. I have long since abandoned it alongside everything else. I am but a crestfallen warrior. Part of him was relieved to finally have a name to put to the face. Another part recognized the particular sound of someone opening a door they had been keeping shut for a very long time and immediately regretting it. Now leave me alone. There it was. This is my problem with emos, Naruto thought while walking away. 1 second they crack open and the next they act like the whole world revolves around their misery. He returned to the problem at hand. Do I really have to die to go home? He stood there with that thought for a moment longer than was comfortable. Oscar had told him that dying stripped away memories. That each death chipped away at who you were until nothing remained but a hollow shell. But Naruto had died in Lordran and woken up in Konoha with every memory intact. Which meant either the rules worked differently for him, or something about being sent back to Konoha rather than to a bonfire was interrupting the process before it could take anything. Or maybe I need to die a certain number of times before it starts taking effect. He did not know. He stood at the edge of Firelink Shrine and looked out at what lay beyond it, the dead kingdom sprawling below. Now what do I do? He already knew the answer. He looked down at the drop below the cliff edge, unequipped his armor and jumped. Defeated the asylum demon, Alexander thought, staring at the bonfire. What a joke. Nobody beat that monster. You died, or you ran. Those were the options available to undead in the Northern Asylum, and everyone who had ever passed through Firelink on their way to whatever pointless end awaited them had confirmed it one way or another. So why could he not dismiss it? The warrior heard running, causing him to look up. His brain, which had long since stopped being surprised by anything Lordran produced, went completely blank at the boy's suicide attempt. Maybe going hollow really is better than the hell that waits out here. Maybe I should do it too. But he was too much of a coward to act on it. Too much of a coward to die and too much of a coward to live properly either. He looked back at the bonfire. And waited. Waited for the inevitable rush of essence reforming, the dark sign pulling another undead back from the edge of finality and depositing them at the nearest bonfire whether they wanted it or not. Discover fantasy books. It was their curse. Death, rebirth and another piece scraped away each time until the loop was all that remained. Yet the boy did not respawn. Alexander frowned as a minute passed. Then another. The flames gave no indication that it had received anything at all from the cliff below. Something uneasy stirred in his chest, which surprised him because he had assumed that particular capacity had been scraped away some time ago. Why is he not respawning? Then he felt it. A surge of souls at the cliff edge. Larger than it should have been for a mere child. The crestfallen warrior's eyes widened at the color of the soul drop. Green. Not the pale yellow of a common undead soul. Alexander had heard about green soul drops once. In stories about souls from other worlds that were called to Lordran's lands. The warrior had dismissed it as the kind of thing people invented to make the darkness feel more interesting. The size of the soul drop told a different story. The kid was telling the truth. He lied the asylum demon. And he actually is from another world. Wow. Guess I have seen it all now. And the brat has absolutely no idea what a soul drop is or what will happen if something else absorbs it before he comes back. The hollow at the far cliff had already turned toward the green glow like moths to a flame. Alexander cut it down with a single swing. Another came from the left. A third emerged from the shadows near the broken wall, and he dealt with those too. He stood his ground over the green soul drop and waited. Great, Alexander thought, bisecting a hollow that had gotten too close to the green glow. Now I am a soul drop guardian. This is what my existence has been reduced to. Another hollow. He cut it down. If something absorbs that drop before the boy comes back, whatever it becomes is going to be my problem. My problem, because a stupid child did not go to the firekeeper to absorb his soul. Alexander shoved a hollow off the ledge with his shield. Brat, you owe me for this. Yet as he cut down another hollow, he noticed his breathing had changed. The battlefield had always been the one place where the hollow weight behind his eyes went quiet and left only the present moment, only the next hollow, only the dance. Alexander was here because an empowered hollow would be his problem. That was all this was. But as he blocked a hollow, there was a quiet gratitude sitting in his chest for a strange boy in armor who had accidentally reminded him of his humanity. Morning had come slowly, and Hiruzen was grateful. After last night's chaos, a slow morning was more than welcome. His task was simple and enjoyable. Going through the genin registration forms and finalizing the candidates for the Jonin to choose from. A small smile crept onto his face as he reviewed the names, each one representing a future leaf of the village. He could have let his team handle it. They were more than capable of combing through those forms. God knew how much he relied on them to keep up with all the paperwork in Konoha. It was not that he could not do it himself, but it ate away at his time. Something he wished he had more of. Then, as he reached the final registration form, his smile was replaced by a frown. There was no form for Naruto. Of course. How could I forget? Naruto had not properly graduated. At his finger tap, an Anbu operative appeared in front of his desk. Bring me Naruto Uzumaki, the old man ordered, watching her bow before disappearing in a whirl of leaves and reappearing 10 minutes later with something he was not prepared to see. Naruto Uzumaki wore armor. Claim military discounts. Hiruzen had seen armor of every kind that the shinobi world produced. Yet he had never seen anything like what Naruto Uzumaki was wearing. The helmet was a bassinet, or something that resembled one closely enough to classify it as such. A rounded skullcap with a pointed apex designed to deflect rather than absorb. A visor with narrow ventilation slits that spoke to a maker who understood that breathability in combat was not a luxury but a necessity. The cloth wrap at the neck was worn and dark, a detail that suggested the armor had seen considerable use. He moved down. The torso was a composite construction. At the foundation, barely visible at the edges, was a padded undergarment. Over that, chainmail hauberk by the look of it, covering the torso and extending downward in a skirt that protected the upper thighs. Over the mail, a surcoat in blue fabric, its embroidered edging faded but still legible as an indication of status. Whoever had made this armor wanted the wearer identified. The plate reinforcement over the torso was not a solid. That was interesting. Instead of a single cuirass, which would have been the simpler solution, there were layered steel plates over mail. Spalders at the shoulders strapped to a leather harness that crossed the chest and back. Additional lames at the upper torso. The arms had couters at the elbows. Vambraces along the forearms, steel bracers strapped with leather at multiple points. The gauntlets were a mismatch. The right was a worn leather glove while the left was a steel gauntlet. The legs followed the same philosophy. Plate reinforcement over mail. Polanes at the knees. Greaves along the shins. A broad leather belt with a bunch of utility pouches and a broken sword. Hiruzen sat back. This style of armor did not belong to any tradition he had ever encountered. Not in the shinobi nations, not in the land of iron, not in any historical record he had studied or any intelligence report he had received in his decades of governance. And considering how perfectly fitted the armor was to the boy's frame, Hiruzen felt with quiet certainty that it had been made for the boy. That observation opened upon a lot more questions than answers. Where did you get that armor, Naruto? The look on Naruto's face made Hiruzen's heart skip a beat. The look of someone who had lost someone recently and was still in the part of grief where the loss kept arriving in new ways. My master gave it to me, Hokage-sama. Hokage-sama. Hiruzen absorbed that formal address. The deliberate distance built into two words that a few days had been old man delivered with the particular irreverence of a boy who felt comfortable enough to be rude. The change said considerably more than the words themselves. Yesterday there had been impossible jutsu under intent. Today there was a mysterious master. The third noted Naruto's body language. The grief was recent. How recently? He could not say with certainty, but the rawness of it suggested days rather than months. Hiruzen looked at the armor again. He did not know what to make of any of it. It was as if Naruto had been living an entire different life. A life with a dead master and skills that had no framework in anything Hiruzen understood. And the boy had simply arrived back in Konoha carrying all of it in his body and saying almost nothing about any of it. Inoichi's words echoed in his head. Do we truly know who Naruto is, Hokage-sama? Not what he can do. Not what he has become. Who he actually is. Do we know what he does when no one is watching? Where he goes? How he spends the hours that are not accounted for? I am beginning to think the answer is no. Hiruzen looked at Naruto across the desk. Even if I want answers, I cannot reach for them directly. Not now. Not with this boy in this state. Every question I push for is a door I risk closing permanently. Hiruzen tapped his finger against the desk 3 times. From the corner of the room, the Anbu acknowledged the signal and withdrew further into the shadows. The silence that followed might have become awkward. It was not because the chair had begun to creak under the armor's weight. Claim military discounts. That armor is heavy, Hiruzen observed. Yeah. Naruto shifted slightly, which produced additional commentary from the chair. I actively have to channel chakra into my muscles to move freely in it. That is one approach. Though I would recommend supplementing that with dedicated physical training while wearing it. Why? If I can just use chakra. Because the armor's resistance does the work your chakra is currently compensating for. Hiruzen folded his hands. Train in it long enough without chakra reinforcement and your baseline strength increases to accommodate the weight. Your cardiovascular endurance develops under load, which means in combat your body performs at a higher ceiling before it needs to draw on chakra reserves at all. Your joints and connective tissue adapt to the demand. Your posture corrects itself because the armor punishes poor posture immediately and without mercy. He paused. Chakra reinforcement is a tool. The body underneath it is the foundation. A stronger foundation means the tool goes further. Naruto stared at him for a moment. Ah, that's actually a great idea. OL. He caught it. Hokage-sama. Hiruzen said nothing about the near miss. But he felt something loosen slightly in his chest. The specific relief of a door that had been closed and bolted showing the faintest hairline crack of light underneath it. He had not earned back what he had lost with this boy. He was not naive enough to believe one conversation accomplished that. But the crack was there. He would have to earn it. Meanwhile Naruto was thinking about the bonfire. Specifically about the bonfire's healing properties. If I train in this armor, and push my muscles past failure, then I go to Lordran. Rest at the bonfire. He thought about how much faster a body could develop if the recovery phase was measured in minutes rather than days. He thought about what that compounded over weeks, over months. Sensei. He thought, I think I just figured out a genuine way to train my body. Suddenly the door flew open. Konohamaru stood in the doorway, all 6 years of him, brown hair spiking through the hole in that ridiculous gray helmet. The child wore a yellow shirt with a crooked Konoha symbol and a large blue scarf hanging off one shoulder. Incoming. On guard, old man. Konohamaru shouted, brandishing a shuriken. The child then tripped over his scarf and landed face first on the floor. The third closed his eyes and tipped his Hokage hat. It was all he could do not to let out a tired sigh. I get it, it's a trap. Another voice came from the back. Hey, are you all right, honorable grandson? And for the record, there are no traps. Konohamaru's tutor had dark hair and ever-present sunglasses. He was in the standard Konoha shinobi outfit, lacking only the flak jacket. When did my office become a playground? Then, to top off this circus, Konohamaru pointed an accusing finger at Naruto. Aha, so you tripped me. It was you, right? Naruto responded with a flick to Konohamaru's forehead. You fell over that stupid scarf. Konohamaru rubbed the spot on his forehead, looking like he was on the verge of tears. How dare you harm the honorable grandson of the third Hokage? Hiruzen really disliked it when people measured someone's worth based on their bloodline. As if Konohamaru's value was solely tied to being the third's grandson. And then there was Konohamaru's smug little smirk. It clearly said he expected Naruto to apologize. This whole debacle made Hiruzen realize his grandson needed a lesson in humility. Hey, apologize to me. Konohamaru demanded, puffing out his chest like a little rooster in front of Naruto. Here is my apology. Naruto raised his fist and gave the 6-year-old the middle finger. Hiruzen snorted before he could stop himself. Whatever else had changed, Naruto was still Naruto. Ebisu and Konohamaru stood with their mouths hanging open like fish in open air. But I am the honorable grandson. Konohamaru sputtered. And I am the squire of Oscar. Naruto said it with a straightness in his spine that had not been there before. Oscar. The name matched no regional dialect Hiruzen knew, bore no resemblance to any naming tradition across the 5 nations or their neighbors. It was simply a foreign word with no origin point he could triangulate toward. And squire meant nothing to him at all. Ha! Konohamaru recovered quickly. That sounds lame. Naruto looked the 6-year-old a death glare. Konohamaru immediately relocated himself behind Ebisu's leg with considerable speed. I'm sorry. Next time you say something stupid like that, Naruto said, with a calm that was somehow more effective than shouting would have been, there will be consequences. How dare you threaten? Ebisu began, hand moving toward his kunai pouch. Choose gun safes. Naruto made a hand sign. A shadow clone materialized directly behind Konohamaru. Ebisu's kunai was already moving on reflex, the blade driving toward the clone's chest. It shattered on the armor. Hiruzen and Naruto both noted this at the same moment with the same expression. Looks like shadow clones with that armor are more durable than regular clones. The clone's elbow found Ebisu's ribs and sent him stumbling back into the wall. Konohamaru was vibrating like a leaf in the wind. He looked at Hiruzen with the expression of someone searching for a lifeline in open water. Don't bother, the clone said pleasantly. I have already defeated the old man. Ebisu's gasp could have been heard from the floor below. Hiruzen coughed. Ebisu, take Konohamaru out of my office. But the third Hokage gave him a look. Ebisu grabbed Konohamaru by the arm and moved toward the door. On his way out, Ebisu aimed a sideways glare at Naruto, who picked his nose. Konohamaru, dragged along behind him, looked back at Naruto with an expression that was equal parts terror and absolute hero worship. The door closed. The clone popped. Didn't want your grandson to know how you lost to my sexy jutsu. I do not know what you're talking about, Hiruzen said, with complete composure. Naruto chuckled to himself. Then the amusement faded as he asked, "So why am I actually here?" Someone knocked on the door. "Come in." Iruka opened the door and his eyes went wide as saucers the moment they landed on Naruto's armor. He stood in the doorway for a full 2 minutes doing nothing but staring. "Iruka," Hiruzen said, "what brings you here?" The Chunin snapped back to attention while fighting a hangover through sheer professionalism. "Yes, Hokage-sama." He straightened. "This is my letter of recommendation for Naruto Uzumaki's graduation to Genin." He read it one final time then placed it on the desk. Hiruzen smiled. "Well, another reason to graduate Naruto." "Another," Naruto and Iruka said together. "Last night Naruto demonstrated everything we look for in a field shinobi. Espionage by infiltrating a secure building and extracting a high-value target. Successful navigation to a rendezvous point under pursuit. And the elimination of a Chunin-level threat." The old man paused. "If that does not qualify someone for Genin, I am not certain what does." Naruto's ears went red at the praise. "Hokage-sama." Iruka reached up and removed his own headband. "May I? You will need a replacement. You have one in your desk." "That I do." He gestured for Iruka to continue and sat back. This moment belonged to them. He was a witness, nothing more. Iruka held the headband out. The boy looked at it, then at his elite knight armor. "Claim military discounts. I'll just wear it on my arm," Naruto said, holding out his forearm. Iruka fastened it carefully, making sure it sat properly against the armor's vambrace. Then he straightened and looked at his student. "Naruto, I have watched you fail that exam 3 times. I have watched this village look at you and decide, before you ever had a chance to show them otherwise, that you were already the sum of their worst fears." He paused. "Last night you stole a forbidden scroll and master a jutsu that Jonin struggle with. Then stand over the body of a man who tried to use you and feel nothing about it." His jaw tightened slightly. "That last part scared me, if I am being honest." Naruto did not look away. "But you know what scared me more," Iruka continued. "The fact that I understood why. Because I know what this village has given you to work with. I know what you have had and what you haven't had and what you built out of the difference." He met the boy's eyes. "You are stubborn, reckless and make everything harder than it needs to be. And you have never, not once in all the years I have known you, quit." A pause. "You are a genin. You have earned it 100 times over. And whatever you are becoming, Naruto, I am on your side." Naruto looked at the headband on his arm. "Thanks, Iruka-sensei," he said quietly as he got up to hug the Chunin. Hiruzen cleared his throat after a moment. "Congratulations, Genin Naruto. Now I just need your graduation form." "Here," Iruka said, producing the documents. Hiruzen reviewed them, signed where necessary, and set them aside. Iruka stepped back and gave Naruto a thumbs up. "Everything's in order. Now, before you leave, there is the matter of your mission reward." Naruto and Iruka both looked perplexed. By technical definition, you were manipulated into an infiltration mission, successfully completed the objective under hostile conditions, and neutralized a traitor to the village in the process. Hiruzen's expression remained entirely neutral. "That will be logged as a solo mission on your record. The corresponding payment and mission points will be allocated accordingly." Iruka's eye twitched. "Hokage-sama, is that strictly allowed?" "I am the Hokage," Hiruzen said pleasantly, "so." Iruka chose not to pursue this. Naruto, wisely deciding not to look a gift horse in the mouth, asked, "Hey, can I get a jutsu as a reward instead?" Inoichi's words surfaced in Hiruzen's mind. If the boy has undisclosed abilities, he will find ways to justify acquiring more without revealing what he already possesses. Was this that? An excuse to demonstrate something he had already learned. A test of how much they were watching. Any particular jutsu in mind? Hiruzen asked, keeping his voice completely even. I don't know. Something that lets me run away really fast. There were things in Lordran that could not be beaten. The Black Knight had made the lesson very clear. Speed had not saved him that day so much as creativity had. But creativity needed distance to work, and distance required getting away first. Hence the request. Uruka, do you know the body flicker jutsu? Of course. Uruka paused as the Hokage's implication settled. You want me to teach it to Naruto? Hiruzen nodded. Naruto's face showed pure excitement. He launched himself out of the chair with the full weight of the elite knight armor behind him. Claim military discounts. The chair collapsed completely. I'll be at the training grounds, Uruka-sensei. Naruto was already at the door, as running away was the best response to broken furniture. Guess he is still Naruto, Uruka said. And that's for the best, Hiruzen replied quietly. Hokage-sama, about the graduation tallies, the placement lists, I'll have it handled. Hiruzen waved a hand. Go and teach. Go and teach, the Chunin instructor muttered, bowing, and leaving Hiruzen alone in the office. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The clock on the wall marked the silence after the door closed. Hiruzen blew smoke upward in slow, unhurried ribbons. Report. Inoichi appeared and placed a scroll on the desk. He had been there for the entire conversation. That was what he had his Anbu do. Hiruzen looked at the scroll without touching it. This is Anbu Owl's overnight report on Naruto. Inoichi folded his hands behind his back. The boy returned to his apartment, slept, and came here this morning. The apartment was searched while he was en route. Officers found nothing unusual beyond what we already knew about. Hiruzen drew on his pipe slowly. The mysteries were compounding, each answer producing two new questions. Each observation opening a door onto a corridor with no visible end. What is your honest assessment of Naruto? The grief is real. The observation of his body language and how he spoke in relation to his master was authentic. He paused. Whatever happened to him was real and it cost him something significant. And yet, Hiruzen said, we are looking at a boy who appears to have lived an entire chapter of his life that we have no access to and no framework for. Hiruzen set down his pipe. Is he hiding it deliberately? That's the part one find most interesting. Inoichi moved to the chair yet chose to stand. In my initial assessment I assumed the mask was the whole story. A child who learned to perform because performing was safer than being seen. But what we observed this morning does not fit that model cleanly. He looked at the door. He told you about the master. He wore the armor openly. He did not deflect when you looked at it. A boy running a deliberate concealment operation does not do those things. So he's not hiding. I think he's being selective, Inoichi said carefully. He's sharing what he's comfortable sharing and keeping the rest close, the way anyone does after losing someone. A pause. The question is whether what he's keeping close represents a threat or simply something he isn't ready to speak about yet. He's not a threat, Hiruzen said. More to himself than to Inoichi. No, he's not a threat. A pause. But we should understand what he's carrying, the Yamanaka added carefully, before it becomes one. The clock marked the silence. My recommendation remains the same. We observe. We do not push. We create conditions where cooperation with Konoha becomes something Naruto chooses rather than something imposed on him, Inoichi stated. Pushing that boy right now, with fresh grief and fresh distance between you, would close every door we still have open. Find me everything that exists on the word squire, Hiruzen said quietly. The name Oscar. And the design philosophy of that armor. Claim military discounts. Already assigned, Inoichi said. Hiruzen took a drag out of his pipe. What about the Jonin-sensei? I'm working on that. Naruto stood in the open field and breathed in. Trees stretched in every direction as far as he could see, the training ground quiet except for the wind moving through the branches overhead. Iruka had his instructor face on. Body flicker technique, he began, settling into the cadence Naruto had heard 1,000 times in a classroom and was only now learning to actually listen to. A ninja uses chakra to temporarily vitalize the body and move at extreme speeds across short or long distances. The amount of chakra required scales with distance and elevation. The further you go or the higher you climb, the more it costs. Sensei, what's the difference between body flicker and substitution? From the outside they look the same. Iruka had a surprised expression that Naruto had asked something worth answering. That's a good question actually. I know. Both techniques release chakra from the ankles, Iruka continued. That's where the similarity ends. Substitution releases a single concentrated burst, short range, fast, and leaves a replacement object behind in your position. The log, usually. Body flicker works differently. He paused to make sure Naruto was following. It doesn't release all the chakra at once. It releases it in sequential waves. Like what? Hold out your hand. Naruto held it out. Iruka tapped his palm once, then twice, each tap slightly harder than the last. First wave gets you moving. Second wave builds on the momentum of the first. Third wave builds on the second. Each release of chakra from the ankles compounds with the velocity you already have rather than starting from zero. He stepped back. That's why body flicker accelerates as it goes rather than moving at a fixed speed. The longer the distance, the faster you're moving by the time you arrive. Like ripples in a lake. Exactly like that. When did you start thinking in analogies? I have always been the smart one, Iruka-sensei. You failed the graduation exam 3 times. Strategically. Iruka laughed while performing the hand signs. Half tiger and ram. His body flickered. 30 feet away before Naruto's eyes had finished tracking the motion. Iruka was standing casually at the treeline like he had always been there. Any questions? Can you fight while flickering? Evasion and dodging, yes. Chunin and Jonin use it the way a genin uses substitution, to exit a bad position very quickly. Direct combat is harder, Iruka explained. The sequential wave acceleration produces tunnel vision. Attacking from that state means committing to something you can barely see. So you can't fight with it. Most people can't, Iruka said. But, Naruto looked up. There was a shinobi who found a way to use body flicker directly in combat, Iruka said with a deeply respectful tone. How exactly? I don't know. What we know is the result. He pushed the technique past every conventional ceiling and at those speeds his body left afterimages solid enough that opponents couldn't distinguish them from the real thing in the moment. He paused. People compared him to the 4th Hokage. Who is this awesome guy? Shisui of the body flicker. Naruto gasped. I met him a few times, Iruka said quietly, the warmth in his voice belonging to something specific and kept. A good man who died too young. Naruto went quiet as a form of respect, while an idea had been assembling itself in his mind. Body flicker in direct combat. Nobody knew how Shisui had solved the tunnel vision problem. But Naruto did not need to find that answer. He already had a different one. The knight's sight did not operate through his eyes. It lifted his awareness above his body entirely, indifferent to the direction he was facing or the speed he was moving. The grin arrived before he had finished the thought. Naruto of the body flicker. He liked it considerably.